Welcome back to my channel Celebuzz. Please share and subscribe and press the bell icon for new updates. Muhammad Ali rested for almost 10 years, unaltered in the tranquil surroundings of Louisville's Cave Hill Cemetery, Kentucky. His final resting place, chosen by the legendary boxer himself, was intended to be a location of perpetual tranquility, last refuge for a guy who has dedicated his life to in the limelight. However, a disturbing enigma emerged 9 years later, started to take shape, one that compelled scientists and officials from the cemetery to make a tough choice. Muhammad Ali's tomb. What they discovered within defied science and left specialists stunned. The findings would cause a ripple effect throughout the globe, sparking an international mystery. Nobody was able to explain it. To this day, the greatest rests. I would prefer not to boast excessively regarding it. Yet everyone who observes me battle, or everyone who has seen, they claim that during one of my fights, I am the finest they had ever witnessed. Muhammad Ali was not only a fighter, he was a trailblazing individual who shook the environment, both within and outside Thering. His wit, charm, and unwavering, his self-assurance made him among the most well-known and significant athletes in past. He wasn't just a victor in the ring. He advocated for fairness, a man who speaks up for the downtrodden, and remained true to his beliefs despite the price. The world is ruled by me. Hold on it. Keep it in place. Lovely. Keep it in place. You're not that lovely. I'm a bad guy. I trembled. The entire world. The world was rocked by me. As soon as he proclaimed himself the world thought he was the finest. Not only because to his talent, but also for the steadfast belief that characterized his every action. The world bids Muhammad Ali farewell. I am the best. The death of Muhammad Ali, the American icon. The legendary boxer's life ended at 74 years old. An era's end. The demise of a unique person in this planet. Ali. Among the most well-known and adored athletes in history, has died. Muhammad, the legendary boxer Ali's fight against Parkinson's disease was lost. Arizona, late Friday. As soon as Ali died on June 3, 2016, becoming the globe lamented a legend's passing. His thousands of people attended the funeral while around the world, millions more people watched. Fans, celebrities, and heads of state people arrived from all around the world, together to commemorate a man's life, who had altered the course of history. However, even in dying, Ali ensured that his resting site would be a reflection of his ideals, faith, modesty, and an unwavering relationship to his hometown. He had selected his own Cave Hill Cemetery's burial grounds in Louisville, Kentucky, is a location where historical importance renowned for its calm beauty. Ali's choice has more to do with place. It had to do with purpose. He desired to sleep in the same soil that he had put his gloves on first, in the place that had helped to make him a legend he turned into. His burial's simplicity was remarkable, in contrast to other worldwide icons which were interred in ornate mausoleums. Ali's tomb merely had Ali, one inscription. It had strength in its simplicity, which is evidence of his legacy that didn't require ornamentation. His tomb was turned into a hallowed pilgrimage site that attracts tourists from all across the world who wanted to make payment their regards. Supporters knelt next to the humble headstone, while others are laying flowers, muttering prayers, or expressing their first-hand accounts of how Ali had motivated them. For almost 10 years, Ali's last was a peaceful location to rest. Until 9 years later, a surprising developments compelled authorities to make a challenging choice. Initially, it was only modest structural worries. As part of a regular examination, officials thought. However, soon, fissures deepened in the surrounding area. Changes that are subtle in the earth brought up fresh issues, and scientists observed irregularities that couldn't describe. What had originally it appeared that environmental wear started to appear to be something quite different. The once a place of peace, the cemetery had turned into the focus of an expanding mystery. Preservation was the stated justification. The true query was far more bizarre. What was going on in the tomb? Without alternative, cemetery authorities and experts came to a startling conclusion. The tomb of Muhammad Ali had to be opened. Almost 10 years ago, Muhammad Ali had slept undisturbed. However, when they eventually opened it, they discovered scientists were astonished by what they saw within. Mystery starts to unfold. The grave of Muhammad Ali has been allocation for years of peaceful contemplation, where guests from throughout the globe come to arrive to offer their respects, departing notes, flowers, and tiny mementos of respect. It began with an initial something that could have been readily forgotten. Groundskeepers noticed slight changes in the soil, an odd pattern of settling that did not align with the remainder of the graveyard. Initially, they thought it was a natural event, possibly due to seasonal variations in the weather or basic erosion. However, over time, the changes increased in pronounced. Cracks started to appear along the paths close to Ali's tomb. All right cracks that gradually spread out in a pattern that is too particular to be arbitrary. The cemetery employees noted this, and as their concerns increased, they contacted structural engineers to investigate the situation. Continue. Initially, they discovered odd. The earth wasn't moving in a manner that would typically occur, and it had nothing to do with the typical environmental elements such as tree roots or water erosion spreading. The fissures appeared from Ali's tomb, the only source. The local tombs remained unchanged with their sturdy foundations. However, Ali's grave appeared to be in the midst of an activity. Odd. As the months went by, the problem gotten worse. There were more fractures, not only in the earth but also along the Ali's burial was covered by a marble slab. The formerly sturdy structure was now visible, obvious indications of tension. Ground was utilized by engineers, scanning beneath the surface with penetrating radar surface, looking for a clear reason. However, what they discovered only made of the puzzle. Below, there was movement. The grave, a strangeness that couldn't be accounted for by spontaneous geological changes. Whatever was going on, it was focused solely on Ali's graveyard. Now, the scientific community paid attention. Specialists in forensics and soil mechanics geology were introduced to investigate the region with the intention of protecting it with little disruption. They excluded seismic activity, excluding the potential for a tremor beneath the surface. No reports of flooding had surfaced, no signs of animals burrowing or roots of invasive plants that may be accountable. The mausoleum appeared to be. Something was causing the ground to react, but nobody knew why. The longer the problem continued, the higher the danger. Without intervention, the grave's integrity could be compromised. This was not merely a matter of interest, it had to do with conservation. The Cave Authority's Hill Cemetery has long been proud of preserving the buried person's dignity. There, and permitting the tomb of Ali to it was just not going to decay. Once every option has been exhausted explanations, the conversation shifted toward a choice that nobody had expected. If the reason couldn't be recognized externally, then there was just one choice. The life of Muhammad Ali would be necessary. To open the tomb, what was underneath? What was bringing about these strange alterations? Scientists were going to learn. And what they found left them startled. The choice to open the tomb. The notion that Muhammad Ali's nobody took the grave in a light manner. The man regarded as the greatest had been buried with the highest in accordance with his beliefs and desires. Unsettling his last resting spot appeared nearly unthinkable. However, the increasing enigma surrounding the abnormalities in the structure at his grave left professionals who have no other option. The fractures, the fluctuating terrain, the mysterious movement underneath the surface. Every new piece of evidence indicated an issue that could no longer be disregarded. Officials from the cemetery, forensic experts, as well as structural engineers, convened to talk about the circumstance. Each and every option been taken into account. Is reinforcement possible? Inserted without upsetting the grave? Could more thorough scans yield better wisdom? However, regardless of how many theories were suggested, they all returned to the same disturbing truth. Without their task would be to open the tomb, mindlessly, running the risk of causing further harm to Ali's graveyard. The family of Ali was contacted right away. The appeal to exhume his remains were greeted by reasonable hesitancy. To them, their cherished husband, father, and hero had been respectfully buried. They considered uncovering his tomb, even for scientific objectives, was extremely disturbing. They were looking for assurances. They were curious as to whether this was utterly essential. Above all, they wished to confirm that their dads, there would be no exploitation of memory or legacy, or treated disrespectfully. The group of professionals gave them access to everything available statistics, demonstrating the slow but indisputable decay of the tomb's structure. If the damage went uncorrected, the possibility of collapse might jeopardize the integrity of the actual grave. What was taking place? This was very odd. Graves didn't just move in this manner without a distinct justification. The circumstances weren't simply a question of interest, but of conservation. If they were waiting for too long, the harm could become unchangeable. After a number of challenging discussions, Ali's relatives grudgingly provided their approval, but they had circumstances. Exhumation has to be considered, treated with the utmost caution and tact. Absence of the media, none needless publicity. This was to avoid becoming a spectacle. Just the required staff would be permitted on location, and everything needed to be completed in accordance with rigorous legal and ethical rules. The family desired reassurance that Muhammad Ali's placement at returning to his grave, he would stay unaltered for all time. With the after making a decision, preparation started. Equipment was brought, and a date was selected in, and the group of experts meticulously organized each stage of the procedure. At one point, no one knew what to anticipate. They opened the tomb. Hypotheses flowed, encompassing structural inability to adapt to unique environmental elements. However, as the last few hours before, as the examination drew near, one query hung over all those concerned. What would they discover within Muhammad Ali's tomb? The terrifying moment. They opened the tomb, thus. Exhumation morning was uncannily quiet. Typically, Cave Hill Cemetery is a tranquil haven of introspection, felt different. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation as the group of professionals, forensic investigators, structural engineers, experts, as well as cemetery officials, gathered beside the grave of Muhammad Ali. Each motion was accurate, and each instruction was closely adhered to. This wasn't your typical exhumation. This was the tomb's opening of one of the most renowned sportsmen in contemporary past. The gravity of the situation was not lost on anyone in attendance. The exterior Ali's tomb slab had stayed in place, untouched for 9 years. It weighs a much marble surface that shields the winner's last resting place. As the group started the sensitive removal procedure, there existed an implicit comprehension that it was necessary to treat whatever was underneath with the highest regard. The apparatus utilized was intended to reduce disturbance, but despite the biggest accuracy, the slab's initial lift created a slight tremor in the surrounding terrain. There was silence over the assembled squad as dust and tiny stone bits became loose and floated into the atmosphere. Then, an unforeseen event occurred. The last layer was meticulously eliminated. A clear draft of the tomb released chilly air. Some of the scientists exchanged perplexed looks. Usually, burial rooms are firmly sealed, intended to stay unaffected by the external surroundings. The airflow's presence indicated anything out of the ordinary. A gap, a change, or a hole in the framework that wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't not inherently sinister, but it was not typical, for sure. As the forensic experts arrived to record the chamber, they saw right away one more anomaly. The tomb within, which ought to have stayed firmly in position, had moved a little. Although it was a slight shift in a framework that was intended to stay immobile, even the smallest, the displacement was substantial. The casket was angled at a slight but discernible angle, as though it had been triggered by change with time. There hadn't been any reports of local earthquake activity, no indication of subterranean water movements powerful enough to change the basis of the grave. The displacement was limited, only to the grave of Ali. Afterward, among the forensic experts would disclose that his initial idea about upon witnessing the tomb, I thought, this is unsettling. He was aware that the words carried an unsettling burden. Therefore, he remained silent, letting his co-workers perform their duties. However, he saw that everyone was feeling as uncomfortable as he was. The group had anticipated to locate fissures, changes in the earth, maybe indications of the tomb's natural deterioration. However, the sudden airflow, the changing vault, as well as the eerie mood that permeates the gathering, indicated that they were coping with something much less foreseeable. The step was unavoidable. Using gloves with deliberate motions, the group ready to remove Muhammad's lid Ali's coffin. The subsequent moment would rank among the most startling their professional breakthroughs. The unthinkable discovery. When Muhammad Ali's lid, the coffin was cautiously raised, the assembled group held its breath. The pressure of the moment on them as powerful lights came on. The burial vaults inside. What? They were frozen in place by what they saw inside. Location. The body of Ali, even though it had been, was much more intact after being buried for 9 years. More than anyone anticipated. Although significant organic decay had took place, and the level of preservation was startling. His facial features stayed distinctly different, his features identifiable in a manner that went against what forensic experts were expecting. There was not evidence of widespread deterioration, no total disintegration of the skeleton, merely an unique preservation condition that left. The specialists looked at each other uneasily. The principal forensic pathologist took action. Ahead, his face changing from as he studied, His curiosity turned to incredulity. The remnants. It wasn't only the preservation that made him uneasy. It was the complete lack of a clear justification for it. Ali had been embalmed before to his funeral, a typical practice. However, embalming by itself could not take into consideration this degree of preservation. After spending almost 10 years underground, the circumstances within the tomb did not propose the use of artificial climate control. Nor were there any indications of a chemical intervention that goes beyond what would have been utilized when burial. The soil of cave is rich in limestone. Hill Cemetery had a reputation for helping, the degradation slowing down, but not to this degree. Something else was going on, something that is not forensic. Neither environmental variables nor science could right away explain. The mystery was further compounded by the state of the actual burial crypt. In contrast to most caskets that have obvious indications of long-term moisture damage, Ella displayed relatively slight signs of wear. The chamber's inside was drier, more than anticipated in spite of the chilly draft of air that was found when the grave was initially opened. Researchers looked at the walls around it, looking for any indications of outside contamination. However, discovered nothing that might be used right away, elucidate why Ali's remains were so preserved in a unique way. The guardians of the graveyard, who took pride in careful upkeep, had not provided any extra care given to Ali's burial beyond the routine maintenance of the ground above him. In spite of the surprising results, as scientists, the group was aware of that. Whatever had happened had to stay inside the parameters of reality. No explanations of the paranormal, no supernatural components, merely an instance so uncommon that even the most seasoned forensic investigators found it difficult to comprehend. What had began as a basic structural, the inquiry had evolved into something much more intricate. The fissures in the ground had brought them to the understanding that abandoned everyone, agitated. The group had been ready, for a variety of reasons. However, what they discovered within the tomb of Muhammad Ali questioned the boundaries of what they believed they was aware. An oddity inside the tomb. While forensic experts persisted, upon closer inspection, something caught their focus. A dark, solid material incorporated into the grave shroud close to the bones of Muhammad Ali. It was not at all what they had anticipated locate. Upon initial observation, it seemed to be an organic substance that has solidified over time. However, its arrangement and feel were uncommon. The group, already agitated by Ali's body's preservation, presently confronted a second query. What was this? Strangeness. And why was it present? With great care, the forensic pathologists withdrew a tiny piece for a closer look. Examination. In the intense light of the light of analysis, the content showed a raw, discolored, and crystalline surface, startlingly intact. But with time, there was no prompt justification for what they were examining. Abruptly, it became clear that whatever was going on with it would take time for Ali's grave to look into it. Soil would be necessary for them, samples, images, and comprehensive reports to continue their investigation, while honoring their pledge to Ali's relatives, then sealing up the grave once more. First, tests eliminated the possibility of mold growth, or typical mineral deposits that could naturally occur in a graveyard surroundings. It wasn't the outcome of simple deterioration, and it didn't correspond with the anticipated embalming fluid residues engaging with the environment materials. As further samples were collected, the group discovered that they were up against an unforeseen forensic conundrum. The existence of this unknown material, mixed with, considering the exceptional preservation of Ali's body, implied that something uncommon had took place within the tomb, something that researchers had not yet completely understand. Right now, all they were aware of was that Ali's tomb, formerly believed to be a straightforward, peaceful sleeping area, having turned into the location of a mystery that would take a lot more time than a detour solve. They have their sights set on a possible unknown mineral in the soil, or a unique kind of earth that possessed outstanding preservation attributes. Whatever they were negotiating, they had been surprised, but it was time to refocus their rational thoughts and endeavor to obtain solutions, theories as well as conjectures. As news of the unexpected spreads, findings in the tomb of Muhammad Ali dispersed throughout the scientific community, theories started to surface. Professionals from a number of disciplines, including forensic geology, pathology, and funeral science, made an effort to assemble an irrational explanation. Could the uncommon Ali's body preservation and the enigmatic irregularity within the tomb be the outcome of an uncommon natural occurrence? Or was there something else at work? Among the first theories focused on regarding the distinct soil composition of Cave Hill Cemetery. The rich limestone earth, along with the comparatively consistent moisture and temperature circumstances in the burial chamber, may have produced a setting that considerably slowed breakdown. Similar incidents had been recorded in the past where natural mummification took place as a result of environmental elements, even though they stayed uncommon. But this didn't describe the unusual material discovered close to Ali's body. One more conjecture included the embalming procedure. Although Ali's remains had been handled in accordance with standard procedures, others proposed that ascertain embalming combination substances could have interacted with the unexpected burial setting. They hypothesized that this response could have played a part in both the slower breakdown and the creation of the solidified substance discovered in the grave. However, when contrasting the results with additional embalmed corpses interred beneath comparable circumstances, the irregularities proved challenging to defend. Others thought about the potential that the burial vault's relocation had a part. If minor changes in the ground had changed the airflow inside the tomb, the modification might have affected them, manner in which organic compounds and moisture interacted over time. But none of these theories explained everything, the results providing researchers with more queries than responses. What had actually took place within Muhammad Ali's tomb throughout the previous 9 years? The ultimate decision. What we understand. Right now, experts came to a conclusion following weeks of analysis that combined surroundings, burial procedures as well as natural chemicals. Events led to Muhammad Ali's outstanding preservation. The area's climate, in addition to the particular circumstances at Cave Hill Cemetery, produced a climate that considerably slowed the breakdown procedure. Furthermore, the application of a specially made coffin made using materials intended to preserve contributed to his outstanding conservation. Researchers observed the distinct interaction between moisture levels, makeup of the soil, and even the exact configuration of his last resting place as essential components in preserving his physical condition. Experts also looked at the effects of funeral customs themselves. Ali's family had adopted a mix of both contemporary and conventional methods that highlighted the significance of defense against the elements, making certain that his body was protected from the consequences of time. These techniques, in addition to the cautious re-entry, were evidence of the regard and respect given to the legendary boxer. He carefully re-entered his body with extra actions done to strengthen the tomb's integrity. The Cave Hill. The people was reassured by cemetery officials that the final resting place of Ali would be maintained with the highest regard, making certain that he would keep sleeping in tranquility. The choice to shut down the design of the mausoleum honors both the wishes of Ali's family and his legacy, understanding the importance of privacy and honorable last resting place. The tomb was strengthened with more safeguards to guarantee that Ali's legacy endures for future generations. Come on. The finding, albeit unexpected, reminded us of the everlasting Muhammad Ali's presence. Even when you're dead, his legacy was unaffected, leaving fans, historians, and scientists all in wonder. His body's preservation was emblematic of his extravagant lifestyle persona. An athlete who pushed boundaries, questioned conventions, and enthralled the world. The life of Muhammad Ali was full of accompanied by unexpected moments. From his triumphs in combat to his steadfast support of justice, he was a man who was impossible to ignore. When dying, he still enthralls people worldwide. His tomb was never meant to be opened, to be a show. However, what was discovered inside ignited a fresh degree of admiration for the legendary figure he was. The circumstances of his last resting place will now act as a crucial case research, guaranteeing that his impact goes well beyond his life. I heard Muhammad Ali say, "Don't count the make the most of each day, even in his eternal slumber his tale keeps going." That's all. Do you believe that scientists were authority to open the tomb of Muhammad Ali, or should it have been left alone? Let us know what you think in the comments section. Thank you for viewing. See you in the following video.